Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is Council on Future Conflicts, episode 475. My name is Scott, the proprietor of the Future Conflict channel. Today, we got a hell of a show for you. Possibly the longest title that we've ever had on it was so long, and we were unwilling to change it that we actually had to shrink the lettering. So, apologies if your eyes are not, it was our witty take on our own version of the acronym for USAID, which is useless spending and insidious dollars. And then we're also talking south of the border, down Mexico way. A lot of stuff happening with the deportation of criminal aliens. They're kind of starting low on the totem pole, the low hanging fruit. But we've got a guest today who can attest to the lack of traffic, shall we say, along the border. So welcome, Juan Gringo. We appreciate you for being here, brother.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate being here.
Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself and what your kind of your point of view is?
Um, Lifelong border resident on the Texas border. Uh, have experienced it at all of its levels, from nice, normal people coming across looking to truly better themselves in their lives to the up until just recently complete madhouse of lots of really bad, shady people, and
Yeah.
back down to some of the lowest levels I've ever seen in my entire life down here.
Well,
Nice.
we're definitely going to be drawing from your experience because not only are we seeing interesting things happen on the border, we're seeing interesting things happen south of the border. So we're going to be kind of covering the whole gambit. We'll be touching a little bit on what's going on in Mexico, the U.S. interests in Mexico, and then also a little bit of follow up on the Panama China U.S. deal, which is just. If you're sick of all the winning, then you probably won't want to wait for that segment because that being said, it's rife with future conflict as China doesn't get its way by all evidence at this point. Now, that being said, the show ain't over until the fat lady sings, so we'll see where this ends up. But so anyway, Joe, how you doing, brother?
I would say I'm well and good, but I'm still fighting off
In,
whatever this is,
in
which
recovery?
sucks. Huh?
You're
What?
still in recovery?
I'm still in recovery, which sucks because I leave in 7 days for North Carolina for 2 weeks in the field. So we'll see how that goes. But hey, we'll get there. We'll get there. Taking some meds and chugging down some good mixtures here. It'll be all right. It'll be okay. We dug this place out from the snow yesterday. We got another 12 inches over the course of the last 3 days. What's funny is the deer didn't come out during the storm. So for 3 days, they didn't eat. Yesterday, there were just hundreds of deer everywhere coming out and eating. So it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, we got a little snow here too in old South Korea. Not a lot, not like what you guys got, but a good 6 inches or so. So it, you know, del- they canceled school and had a delay of work and all that kind of stuff. So but I'm over snow, honestly. Speaking of over snow, Don, how you doing, brother?
Gentlemen, good morning. Life's still pretty good. Sorry to hear that Joe has COVID and needs to go get a vaccine. Uh, we'll miss
It's
you.
probably your fault.
It probably is. I mean, that is the most likely scenario. Otherwise, though, outside of planning Joe's funeral, life's good.
Don, since you're here and it's your turn, you want to answer this question?
Yeah, absolutely. So they did. I am the very quiet part of the executive order, like the second to last sentence. If you have an active prosecution at the time that the executive order was dropped, it will be your prosecution will be dropped with prejudice, and mine was. I want to say January 21st. I got an email from the lawyer with a copy of their motion to dismiss with prejudice, and then That was accepted like the 22nd. So believe it or not, the courts were actually moving pretty quickly. Laura, being the freaking superhero that she is here, of note, they don't dismiss legal fees. All right. So by all means, if you, but are they recouping your legal fees? No, they are not. There is dirty rumors that maybe Trump will go and say, hey, there's some sort of restitution that all the J6ers are owed, but they're all dirty rumors. That has not happened to the best of my knowledge. More importantly than me, even in all of this, though, is, and I'm not making this up, there is a guy named Benjamin Martin who is still in jail. He has been in jail since like 2022 or something like that. And he has a pardon certificate and is still in prison. So as much as I am happy for all of your help and all of your concern, this fight ain't over. And there are plenty of people who are still just dragging this out here by February 7th, right? That, hey, we're just going to leave this guy in jail because I guess we feel like it. January 6th is not done.
Martin is
you know what I mean? Like, this guy's about to go get a musket and kill some people. That's all I'm saying.
Don't give him a hatchet. It's going to be a problem.
Right.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, Don. I mean, we've known this a little bit of time, but it's just it's kind of like knock on wood, right? You don't ever want to take it for granted because, it's just shows you how fickle the political winds are.
Oh yeah.
And how they can impact people's liberty. I hate to say it, but guys like me who are generally a little more optimistic on the kind of the maybe not the benevolence of governance, but the benevolence of individuals within the government. Even I had to kind of suck down the black pill when it came to January 6th. The COVID and January 6th for me were the two big things that black pilled me, because it went to show that so many people were willing to just operate on the Nuremberg defense as their kind of, I'm just following orders. Sorry, Don, I'm a nice FBI agent. I don't want to do this, but hey, I just got to follow my orders and put you in the clink.
So to give you an idea of how true that is, I was a little bit cagey about what had happened, while the case was going on for very specific legal reasons. In 2022 or 3 or something like that, I called the FBI and said, look, you guys are just arresting January 6ers. I'm sure the day is coming. So if you want to arrest me, just call me, right? Because I'm not really all that worried about how this is going to go. It'll be all right. Don't get me wrong. I was a little probably naive about how bad that was going to go. But regardless, how I didn't want it to go was, and exactly what I told them is, look, I raise prey animals and I have wild dog problems. So if you show up here at 5 a.m. and my dogs start barking, I'm going to come out the front door with a firearm, where I will have no cover. I will be standing in front of a tactical team who is all geared up and ready to kill somebody, holding a firearm. This is not a gunfight I can win. I don't want to be in it. I don't need to be surprised by 30 dudes with rifles while I'm looking for a dog, right? So please, for the sake of all of us, let's not just get in a gunfight at 6 a.m. because somebody wants to do something silly. And the two guys that I talked to at the time were like, yeah, man, you are pretty out here in the middle of nowhere. That makes sense. Hey, thanks for letting us know. I don't think we're going to do that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, right, whatever. But, hey, if that's what you want to do, then I'm telling you, just call. And they said, yeah, cool. We'll, write that up and pass it back. And I recorded this on the phone that they confiscated from me. And so, funny enough, the only electronic device they confiscated was the one that said, hey, this is clearly excessive force. That's what a coincidence, right? Speaking of dogs barking, right? So, sure enough, on the day that they show up to arrest me, one of the two agents who was there on the original occasion when they came down and spoke to me, and I said, hey, just call me and let me know, was there on the day they arrested me. And that guy not only couldn't look me in the eye, he couldn't even look my direction. And, it took me about half the morning to figure out it was him. And one of the things that I'd said to him the first time they were out here was, hey, if you're local, I sell eggs. And I am not such a jerk that I won't sell eggs to the feds. So by all means, come down and buy eggs. And so as this dude's walking me into the courthouse, I'm like, you're one of the guys that was here, last year or whatever. And he says, yeah. I said, man, he didn't even come down and buy eggs. And he's like looking at the ground, almost crying. So yes, there are plenty of these guys who are just banking on, well, I guess just follow orders. And here's the deal. That's not a good defense. It's never been a good defense. If I was standing out in the middle of Afghanistan and somebody went, hey, just go execute those children for the fuck of it, and I did that, guess where I'm going to be? The brig, right?
Yeah.
And I should be, don't get me wrong. I am pretty flexible about what rules of engagement should be compared to politics for sure. But hey, let's just go and execute a bunch of kids. Wrong answer. Let's just go, do any of these other war crime related things. Probably not a great idea. And look, I don't think these guys should get any mercy that the rest of us wouldn't have gotten. So by all means, send them to prison.
Well, the irony is that when you describe that guy doesn't seem like this, mouth frothing Maoist who was ready to, to throw his copy of the Little Red Book at you as he brought you in. That said, he's probably just a regular guy, and this absolutely underscores what the point of that book, Ordinary Men, right? The SS police reservists who were responsible for the killing in the the Warsaw Ghetto. They were all like just normal guys, and they were just police officers. And they go from being just regular police officers, municipal police officers, to becoming the SS that did exactly what they did. And so if you don't think regular, good, normal guys can fall into that kind of stuff, that's just, the perfect case scenario for that. And unfortunately, we did see a little bit of that. If you're an FBI agent, and you're listening to this show and you're like, well, what should I have done? Well, no, when they said you should arrest people for protesting in front of the Capitol, you should have said, well, today's the day I put in my resignation. I can't, I can't do that.
Yeah. I have to take a moment and go over the hilarious situation you just implied there. Probably an FBI agent who was assigned to watch our show decided that he liked it. So now that they've laid off all those assignments, he's kept watching it. Right. Anyhow.
Well, the sad thing is just because you like our show doesn't mean you aren't a piece of crap. If you were the guy who was ready to arrest Watcher because Watcher said the wrong thing, or something like that.
And there's the thing, right? You, Scott, and I'm going to say this: you're an FBI agent. You swore an oath to uphold the Constitution.
Yep.
And you are not.
Yeah. And look, moral courage has a price. That's how it works. Right. It's not you get to stand up and just do whatever and then go, well, but privately, I believe that this is wrong. Like that makes you a bad person. Got it? Like there's no debate about this. Well, I'm very morally against raping children, but we're the biggest distributor of child porn in the world. Sorry, you're a bad person. That's it. And you deserve what is coming to you. And that's not. You don't have to like that. You don't have to, you don't have to, but Dawn is being mean. Fine. Fine. I'm being mean. I'm being mean in the way that each and every one of you expect out of the U.S. military every single day. I lived under this burden plenty, still do. Right. And guess what? If you don't have the moral courage to stand up and say no, then when it's time to face the music, I don't want to hear, but I thought it was wrong. Well, then you knew what you were doing was wrong. And that's it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Let me just make two quick last points on that.
Go for it.
Bob Johnson down in the YouTube chat said, oaths don't mean anything more to a lot of people. They're just words. First of all, Bob Johnson's a graduate of the Fieldcraft class. But second of all, in the Bible, they warn against taking oaths. And it's not because taking oaths is bad. It says, be careful before you take an oath because God will hold you to it. Mm-hmm. So in the end, these people are going to have to answer to a higher power for that. So think about that. And then the second point I lost. That one was just important enough for me to say.
I think it was that Bob Johnson likes pineapple on pizza, and so we must disavow.
Good Lord. Talk about derailing us, Don. Real quick, I just want to hit on this point that Laura Cox mentions here. So here's the thing, right? I'm all for, like, communists aren't people. They're dirty communists and thus should be treated as such. But all jesting aside, you have to, like, get through to the humanity of these people in order to really defeat them, because you can't kill them all. You can't beat them all. You can't whatever.
Challenge
right?
accepted.
If you're fighting an enemy, any enemy, right? And I'm not,
beat me to it.
You can't kill all of them, right? You have, and like, for instance, you have to convince the ones that are just defeated and not destroyed to not do what they chose to do the first time, right? And so, unfortunately, people are humans, but they're fallible, and they have to be given a chance to redeem themselves. But if they don't, then ultimately there are solutions to all of these problems. So yeah. Anyway, just remember, if you remember that your enemies are human, then they have the same weaknesses that all humans do, and you can exploit.
I remember the second point.
Go ahead, Joe.
It comes from Proverbs 27, and it says to rescue those being led away to slaughter, hold back those staggering towards their death. But the next verse applies to what Don had just said. And in the end, you cannot say, oh, but we didn't know, because God will know that you did know.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
look, there's some worse offenders here than others. For example, FBI agent who knew this was wrong can't look me in the face. Look, you want to tell me that guy should, I don't know, just be banned from law enforcement ever? That he should, I don't know, suffer a fine or whatever. Maybe we could haggle that out personally. There's law regarding this, and according to all of them, they uphold the law. So by all means, uphold it. Deprivation of rights, USC 18242 and 243, as I recall. Uphold away. Now, the one who took video of me getting hit by a cop and said that I assaulted an officer, prison for life.
Yeah.
Dude, you clearly threw your face directly in the line of his punch.
I know. It's my fault, right?
You intended to break his knuckles with your forehead.
Exactly.
All right. Let's move on. We haven't even got to the odds and ends yet, so good Lord. Don, I swear. Juan Gringo, thank you. I knew I was going to do that at least once with your name. Say Juan Cholo.
Yes, because we have a Juan Cholo in the chat who is not Juan Gringo.
Yes. So we already said hello to Juan. Thank you for being here, brother. You said that you probably won't talk unless you're talking about the border. Feel free. I'm sure you've got some opinions on stuff. Just because, just like me, it may not be educated, but, it may have some merit. So feel free.
He's clearly educated because he brings good whiskey when he travels.
Well, I know. I just assumed so. I mean,
3 of the 5 of us agree on the whiskey choices. So.
Yes.
I mean, whiskey is generally a pretty good choice. That's a good jumping off point for any.
The funny thing is, we were sitting around the campfire chatting, and we were all sampling the various whiskeys. And I get done with the one that Juan handed me. I was like, "Hey, man," I was like a crackhead. You got any more of that whiskey? Yeah. He's like, "Yeah."
Yeah, you and Don both.
Yeah, no, I am not immune. Like, you're scratching my neck. Like, you got a little bit more of that hanging around.
Watcher, how you doing this morning, brother? Good. I'm a little bit tired. Just checking in for the show before my morning pasty butt check. That's gonna be just the best.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, doing great. Chickens are awesome. You should get some. That's my message for the people.
Very good.
You're not wrong.
Good. they're getting the eggs are getting so expensive now that it's kind of like,
Well, and you saw that. Well, hopefully I didn't get hoaxed because I didn't have time to track this one down. But it looked like it was. It looked like it was real. Turns out that whole egg shortage thing, the USAID thing made it pretty clear that was actually like a legitimate bullshit shortage, that they were trying to force something, and potentially for the financial benefit of people in the egg markets.
well,
So-
just remember, anything like that is not going to fix overnight, and then the value of food has gone up. I mean, across the board. It's not just eggs; it's all food, or like what 50% increase in food prices in the last 5 years, something like that.
So that's just inflation. The reason that eggs
Yeah.
are out of hand comparatively is all of the chicken farms and ranches and what have yous that have lit on fire or have had their birds culled. I don't know. One of the last 3 times or so I was on here, I was talking about, they culled not only the adult chickens on one particular ranch, but they culled all the pullets. And so you are talking from the day that happened, 6 months until they have like even a single egg to sell. And we're not even through that 6 months at this point, as I recall, because I think that was post August, which, is a strangely defining point in my life. And so at best, we're at like 5 months. The reality of this is that if you purge, and I did some math on it a while ago, there's a Twitter thread about it. It's something like 50% of the active egg supply of the country over the course of about 6 months. Yes, the price of eggs goes up.
A lot.
Who knew?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I saw a meme the other day that had a dude had like little baggies with 3 eggs in them and then a pile of money on them. He goes, I didn't choose the egg life. The egg life
right.
chose me. It's kind of where it's getting.
That's how it be right now. I won't kid you.
Lance Corporal Veteran for $2 says, look up degrowth movement and its attack on farms. I mean, the attack on farms is just related to, the larger meta that we're seeing in the kind of globalist.
And below that, and for free, from Rowan Coward over on Rumble says, but bird flu has caused most of this. Yes, and some of what they're uncovering now that not the charlatans have the reins is that no, there wasn't a bird flu epidemic. They made it up.
So
the bird flu epidemic was one woman who decided that there was going to be an epidemic.
Yeah. If you go back into the annals of this show, you can hear me describing that there is an ongoing problem amongst chicken ranchers where everything will be fine, life will be moving along normally, and then the USDA will show up and say, "Oh, you have bird flu," and purge their entire flock. Mm-hmm. Now, for those of you who don't know, and there's no reason to, if you have chickens and you have bird flu, you know it. It is non-debatable. You will have problems. They will become very apparent very quickly. The first thing that you are most likely to notice is that your egg supply will drop precipitously. And nobody was having those problems. Nobody had a bunch of coughing chickens, but somebody showed up with a PCR test and said, "Oh, but you have bird flu," and purged their entire flock.
I don't ever want to hear the words PCR test ever again.
I should add, Rowan, this is his previous comment, and he's totally right here. This is part of the other reason in some states that eggs have gone way up, is that, California, Oregon, and Michigan. Washington, a few others have all passed laws that say that all eggs must be free range, which, again, as a pasture chicken farmer, oh no.
Well, what they're saying is that poor people shouldn't have as much access to eggs. Is what they're saying.
This doesn't mean what you think it means. Just for clarity's sake,
I've heard that eggs are a great source of protein. And protein is how you build strong men.
Yeah,
weird.
To go back to something Joe said just a second ago about that one woman, I'd be very interested in her ancestry and where she's from or her family is from originally. I don't know because I haven't researched it, but weird.
Her people come from China.
Wow. I am shocked and amazed.
Just
China.
coincidence, I'm sure.
China, where all the flus come from, oddly enough. All right. Speaking of China, guys, this is actually a great opportunity to segue into our first story. Taiwan says detects 6 balloons near island.
I'm
Oh
sorry.
boy.
Since we're talking about Taiwanese and Chinese, it's Baroons.
Oh, Baroons. Yes, thank you very much. I forgot. I am in East Asia, Joe, but they don't have the L problem in Korea like they do in China.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
I know. I'm actually pretty well versed in Korenglish because of my former affiliations, but yeah.
Konglish. That's what they call it here. Konglish. At least that's what they tell me they call it. I don't know. I can barely understand what they're saying sometimes. And that's just my wife. Oh, but sorry. I'm going to get in trouble if she hears that. Taiwan detected 6 Chinese balloons off the island, the defense ministry said Friday, as Beijing maintains military pressure to push claim of its sovereignty. The 6 balloons were spotted in a 24-hour period, the ministry said, giving its highest daily tallies of the devices. Along with the balloons, 9 Chinese military aircraft, 6 warships, and 2 official ships were detected near Taiwan over the same period. The balloons were spotted at an altitude of 16 to 20,000 feet, and one of them flew directly over the island, according to an illustration released by the defense ministry. While Taiwan calls itself a sovereign nation, China, of course, claims yada, yada. Anyway, in recent years, China's ramped up the deployment of fighter jets and warships around the self-ruled island. Actually, I should say that the sovereign independent nation of Taiwan.
No. Not the nation of Taiwan. The Republic of China.
We will. Yeah, that's right. The Republic of China. That's exactly the name of their country. By the way, if you remember, Communist China is the breakaway China. It is the breakaway.
West Taiwan is the worst Taiwan.
Yes. Last year, Taiwan detected a record of 8 Chinese balloons less than a month after the presidential elections. Beijing regards Lai as a separatist. So, of course, yeah, they haven't liked a lot of the things that Lai has to say. Taiwan has described the Chinese balloon as a form of gray zone harassment. Gray zone harassment is exactly what the balloons were when they went over the U.S. These are not out of the ordinary in Taiwan. They are very out of the ordinary over the U.S. So I'm curious as to see if we see some more balloons over the U.S. While the U.S. is legally bound to provide arms to Taiwan, Washington has long maintained a strategic ambiguity. So basically, the kind of like don't ask, don't tell when it comes to the country of Taiwan, of the Republic of China. However, U.S. President Donald Trump's transactional style of diplomacy has raised concerns about his willingness to defend the island. So this is, this writer here is clearly like not sold on the way Donald Trump does business. U.S.-Taiwan relations warmed during Trump's first term as he feuded with China over issues like trade and national security. But Trump rattled nerves during his most recent election campaign by suggesting Taiwan should pay the U.S. for protection. Is he wrong, guys? If we're gonna bend over backwards for a country, they should at least, kick up a little bit in order to pay for their defense. And accused the island of stealing U.S. chip industry. Well, if they did, they did. If the shoe fits, wear it. While Taipei has increased,
is a big word.
Stealing, right? It's. I agree. It's just one of those kind of things that it's all about a matter of point of view, I guess. And so, Taiwan's a big island, right? It's 23 million people is a lot of people in an island that size. So it's definitely, it's come under a lot of pressure recently. And I'll be honest with you guys, I haven't seen anything definitive out of the White House since the inauguration of like anything really strong about Taiwan. What do you guys think the direction the Trump administration is going to go with this issue?
I don't know. I think he's probably going to go over the top on sending the military equipment because that would irritate Xi the most.
Yeah. My kind of take is that I think Trump's going to wait and see and use Taiwan as a cudgel to beat China with if he needs it. But ultimately, he may kind of keep quiet if Xi is a little more reasonable in some of the negotiations. So we'll see how that works out. Don, what's your kind of take on this?
If South Africa is any indication, and it might be, then he's going to go hard as he traditionally does, at least out the gate. And then this will probably end up either World War III or very quiet in very short order. And given China's otherwise kind of cuck behavior to Trump, it will probably get very quiet very quickly.
Yeah, the irony is that Trump has definitely mastered the kind of the killing flies with a sledgehammer, kind of methodology of diplomacy. Like, for instance, as soon as I heard the Gaza thing, right, I felt like the Gaza thing was him trying to send some sort of a message to Saudi Arabia, right? I mean, but I don't know. I mean, the way Netanyahu was going on about this idea of the U.S. taking over Gaza, it makes me think that there may be something there. But that was just one example. Panama Canal is another one. He went over the top. And the trade wars with China, with Canada and Mexico is another good example of stuff. He came really hard out of the gate, and then they folded like cheap suits. Yeah. So this may be more
it's
a place
amazing
where he might use that. Go ahead.
It's amazing to me on the commentator level, right? Because if you spend 5 minutes watching Trump, what you get is that he asked for something ridiculous out like, we're going to take Gaza. It's going to be the most beautiful American protectorate. America's going to own it. And in like 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, it'll be like, well, I guess you guys can figure out how to make it okay. But if not, then we're going to take it. And about 2 weeks after that, it's going to be, like, well, we brought peace to the Middle East, right? And this is true of every single thing he engages in. And yet, look at the commentators, right? Like, oh my God, I can't believe he's going to make Gaza the 51st state. Well, yesterday he was going to make Greenland the 51st state. And the day before that, it was Canada. All right. Come on, relax for 5 minutes. But yeah. I know you have to write headlines that spurg out. And, it's not like I'm new to this game. On the other hand, for all of you who are running around like, well, I'm just giving you the honest truth. Like, but are you? Right? You are spurging out about how every nation on earth is about to be the 51st state. Well, I have sad news. Only one of them can be the 51st state. After that, they'll be the 52nd.
Right. Well, so there was actually a really good thread on X the other day by the G Captain guy. What's his name? John
Conrad.
John Conrad. He did this, and it ended up getting retweeted about by Elon Musk. So congrats to that guy for getting the the notice of the king there. And his thread basically was about the Trump administration is inside the decision-making loop of the deep state, right? And the kind of the left-wing blob in the U.S., right? And what this means is that ultimately there's so many stories coming out so fast that they can't message them in time to make the news cycle. So by the time they're ready to comment on the trade war with Canada, not only is the trade war with Canada over, but they're moved on to seizing Greenland or seizing Gaza. And so they're wanting to talk about the trade war with Canada, but the trade war with Canada not only is over, but they've moved on to something else. And then by the time they pivot to the something else, or that the trade war is over, then it's on to the third thing and the fourth thing. So the tempo is so fast of the Trump administration that the other side can't keep up and they can't coordinate their messages, which is something that, that is, the Republican side has always said that, hey, at least the liberals, fall in line and repeat the same message. And, they do a good job of spreading those talking points. But that's been completely broken since the Trump administration's come in.
So it's
exactly
funny.
right.
It's kind of funny because this is the only other place I remember this in modern history is Stormin' Norman, who pretty unironically said at the beginning of the war, we're going to do this so fast the bureaucrats can't screw it up. Right. And that is pretty much the methodology that Trump has taken is if I am moving at, the speed of light, then it doesn't matter. The New York Times can't keep a headline on the front page for more than like an hour. And that is a thing that, they're not used to. They're a big bureaucratic apparatus, slow juggernaut that pushes in one direction. And it's been working for them because everybody is afraid of the political cost of doing things. And it turns out that if you're in the White House and you just do stuff, nobody has any capability to mount resistance. And it's, when Joe Rogan is going, so I watched a left-wing podcast and they're not even talking about like any of the USAID corruption. They're not talking about any of the obvious stuff that's going on. They're just talking about how, maybe some kid somewhere is going to starve because of this. It's like living in a different world. And the simple reality is basically everybody throughout all of time could have done this, but they are either cowards or traitors. Take your pick. I don't really care which. And so, for all of the times, and by the way, they all knew this because whenever they wanted to do something, that's exactly what happened, right? When Bush wanted to invade something, we had troops on the ground before anybody in DC could complain about it. That's just how it went.
And I just shared the thread link in the chat. So if you guys want to read about that, I think it's pretty interesting. So definitely check that out. All right. Moving on to our next story in the odds and ends. So we got two back-to-back stories on Ukraine. Not quite a mini section because these are two in different discrete sections, but oddly enough, they're kind of connected. Ukraine launches new offensive in Kursk, marks 6 months of holding Russian territory. So, Joe, where is Ukraine not having trouble?
Where Russia doesn't want them to, in Kursk.
In Kursk, right? And so what do? Instead of bolstering the failure that they're having down in Pokrovsk, they are sending new units up into Kursk, where they can get some headlines. This is the only place they can get any fucking positive headlines.
Well, so that's exactly the whole point, right? This is a way to generate revenue. This does no strategic good. Russia laughs at it and says, okay, well, we one thing Russia has is space, right? They can certainly trade space because the more space that Ukraine occupies in Russia, the less space it's capable of occupying in Ukraine. It's basic math. Russia doesn't care about this. They're really not doing anything that drastic to the residents. And sure, they hold a little bit of Russian ground, but Russians have a whole lot more ground. They don't care.
Well,
go ahead.
This is pretty standard Russian tactics. Like from the beginning of this war has been, if Russia decides that a war is going badly for them, they just retreat for a while until your supply lines can't keep up with how much land they've quite literally given you. And then they just start killing your troops once your troops are starving. And it's not exactly like Ukraine has great supply lines. So in a month, when these guys can't so much as get an MRE, 3 guys and a dog are going to walk in and take Kursk.
Yeah. Well, so the only if I were to split the hair at all with you, Joe, I would say that it's not that the Russians don't care. It's just they realize exactly what it is and are willing to take the hit. You know what I mean?
I got to disagree with Don for a minute. It's Russia. It would be 3 men and a bear.
Fair enough. Touche. Very American to take a dog. It would indeed be a bear.
Right. Watcher, if you'll go down, there's a map that kind of illustrates, just if for those who may not understand what we're talking about here, let's open this up. I want to show that map. Just open the first one. It is all, and then can you zoom in on this? So all this red area here is all the massive amount of land.
Massive tracts of land.
Huge tracts of land. As soon as Watcher brings it back up, I'll start talking off the map again. Not what I'd call quite a map segment, but Anyway, so all this here is everything from Crimea all the way up to the Luhansk area, Donetsk in the middle. We've got McCullough and we've got Kherson down here in the bottom. If you look at this little bitty blue space, Watcher, can you mouse around the little blue space up here where, right there. This is Kursk. So when they talk about Kursk, you have to like keep in mind that literally it's like 17 villages, right? It's not even a huge area. And the city of Kursk is another like 70 miles inland from here. So this is the Kursk Oblast was what they're talking about, not the city of Kursk itself. Now, that being said, city of Kursk has come under attack from, with drones and things like that. But still, Moscow's come under attack from drones. So it's not like they're doing anything there that they wouldn't do anywhere else.
Point out something here that supports what Rick just said. Odessa's still on the menu. If you notice, that red at the far south has creeped all the way over to where it's beyond Odessa, but it's directly across from the Odessa landing, right? Yeah. So that would mean the infamous Snake Island and a couple other places are now back firmly in Russian control, which makes it a lot easier to take Odessa. If you look at how much closer that stuff across the bottom is, it's really, we're creeping up on that Moldova-Romania border. So,
and so one of the little pockets here in the middle of this red area is Pokrovsk, and once they kind of take that, literally that's their last kind of bastion city in the Donetsk region, and basically that would allow them to push another almost 100 miles before you start getting into heavy defensive areas. Where they would have good lines of communications and all that kind of stuff. So,
speaking of Snake Island, the Snake Island fiasco should have been the end of all support for Ukraine, right? The fact that we exposed that they were liars then should have been enough to just be done with them. But hey,
well, I think the problem, Joe, was the grifters were the ones that kind of discovered, and it was around the time Snake Island kind of came to light and the Ghost of Kiev, all these kind of propaganda victories and whatnot. That's when the grifters really got a hold. And speaking of the grifters, USAID signs on the buildings in Ukraine. Who would have thunk it, Joe?
Me. You.
Well, didn't
right?
They gave if you remember the chart we showed on Wednesday, USAID gave over $1.6 billion of direct foreign assistance to. And I'll be honest with you, Joe. I don't know if even a quarter of that made it to anybody, any of the intended. That was mostly laundered, I would bet.
Well, I mean, that has been the story of the war, so.
Yeah.
The irony is the most reliable foreign aid we've given to them has been the in-kind aid of weapons, right? Like, we give them ammunition or we give them equipment or something like that. And we say, well, this Humvee now costs $40,000. That's the depreciated value of a Humvee. And so we give them a Humvee and we said, okay, we just gave them $40,000. Of aid, or it depends on what kind of creative accounting you want. If you want to go full replacement value of that Humvee, then it's $250,000 for a Humvee. But
I love how you can justify anything in your head.
I'm not justifying. I'm just saying that if you're at least you can't. Oh, wait a second, Joe. You can launder weapons. There is no justification. It's just. Like it's instead of going to them in money that can be fungible and disappear easily, at least there's some work has to go into selling javelins to Colombian drug lords. You know what I mean?
Is that the line that we're drawing here? Like we made them put in effort to screw us.
Well, I'm just saying it's not a fungible asset. It is sellable. It is, but it is not something that you can just.
I don't know. I think javelins are pretty fungible.
Yeah, disappear. All right. So the big headline coming out of this being purported by Zelensky is the fact that they have captured 900 Russian soldiers during this 6 months offensive there in Kursk. And so, I mean, I don't know if that's a big feather in their cap or what. How many Ukrainian soldiers have been captured in that same area? Probably, I don't know. Probably as many, maybe less, but there are less Ukrainians. So,
what's interesting is what's coming out of the USAID disclosures related to this is that all those celebrities you saw taking trips and shaking hands with Zelensky, they were all paid by USAID to sit for those photos. So, pretty interesting.
What is it? Ben Stiller got like $2 million from USAID to go and hang out with Zelensky. There was I can't remember who the other, that was the one that I remember in the article, but it's absolutely nuts. And even all the media tours, Joe, that were going over there were being funded by USAID. And invariably, the media going to cover from the Ukrainian side is not what you would call unbiased journalists, right? I mean, they're literally, blob propagandists that are looking for opportunities to talk about the heart-wrenching story of Ukraine and its corrupt politicians. Pinochet's helicopter tours for $5 says, Don, I understand everything was dismissed with prejudice. However, I understand the FBI creates a file on their target and designates all January 6ers as 22 Oscars. How do you remove this designation?
You don't.
Yeah, that's the short answer. You sit down every morning and you pray that Donald Trump dissolves the FBI. Right? That's how you get rid of it.
That's where I was going to go. But yes, the way you fix that is you burn it down with the files included.
Yeah.
It is ironic that the first salvo at the FBI has been to potentially open criminal cases or criminal investigations in the 5,000 FBI agents that assisted in persecution of January 6ers. So maybe we might see something like the dissolution of the FBI in the near future.
So for whatever reason, Trump is fond of them. I think mostly he has fond memories of the 1970s when they were going after the mob and cleaning
exactly.
up New York.
Yeah, he was a informant, right? Wasn't he?
Well, probably. He was doing a lot of construction in a time and place where the mafia was being a real problem to people doing construction. So I would imagine that yes. And so chances are very good he has fond memories of the FBI
of the 80s,
accidentally, right? For once doing the right thing. But the reality of that organization is that they have been a cancer on the country basically since inception, and they have accidentally done a couple of good things over the years.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great I mean, all you have to do is go back to, their origin and how they abuse power early on. And you can't, once you're that corrupted, you can never uncorrupt yourself. You can just also do good things.
And once you tell an agency their focus is conducting a certain type of investigations and that their funding depends on their success at that, they will make up cases in order to justify more spending.
And they do.
Hence J6.
Well, and the ATF is another great example. That was created during Prohibition to go after alcohol, and so when the alcohol didn't need to be gone after anymore, they had to create new missions for themselves. All right. Moving on to our next story here. So evidently, Trump has a plan to end the war in Ukraine. U.S. set to unveil Trump plan to end 3-year war in Ukraine. Speaking to Newsmax Wednesday evening, Kellogg said he'll be having discussions with European leaders on his trip to Munich and report back to the president. He won't be presenting the plan publicly. That is for Trump to do. Allies are expecting that the details of the proposal will be shared at the February 14th to 16th conference in the Bavarian city, a week before Russia's war hits the 3-year mark. Kellogg and others have dropped hints in recent weeks that Trump's allies have referred to as a peace through strength. Elements include potentially freezing the conflict, leaving territory occupied by Russian forces in limbo while providing Ukraine with security guarantees to ensure that Moscow can't attack again. Later this month, Kellogg is expected to make his first trip to Kiev and elsewhere in the European Union, according to people familiar with the matter. In Ukraine, he's expected to meet with Zelensky. However, the Ukrainian leader is planning to travel to several countries in the Gulf region after the Munich conference, people said. Wouldn't it be ironic if Trump sends his envoy to Ukraine and Zelensky says, "Oh, sorry, I have to go to talk to the GCC folks. Talk to my vice president or whatever while I'm gone." The irony.
I think that would be a good way to get Trump to go, okay, so you're not interested. We're not sending you anything.
Right. One of the things that I've seen kind of floated out of, these are like leaks or rumors, and so take it for what it is. But it's that ultimately the Trump administration may support something that would say that Ukraine could never join NATO, which is exactly the opposite of what Zelensky's pushing for. So it makes me kind of think that might be some truth to that. And that's something that I've said that Ukraine needs to give that assurance that they won't pursue NATO membership ever. That's about the only way you could make Russia feel secure.
They've also
Peter,
said
you
that,
can just say these things.
while you're talking, so I do it as a means for me to remember. But also, Kellogg said that Ukraine will never ever get nukes again, and also Trump as a payment will have access to Ukrainian mineral rights.
Yeah, right. And so the irony, we talked a little bit about this on Wednesday. Because most of those minerals are in Russian-held Donbass, and so the irony is that that's more of a deal between Trump and Putin.
Yeah.
So I found that to be very interesting.
Too bad we absconded from a nation after 20 years where there's trillions of dollars of rare earth metals there.
All right, let me continue on here. Ukrainian bonds, which have been gaining in the most of the last 3 months on speculation of an eventual moment towards peace, added to those gains Wednesday. Dollar notes due in 2035 and 2036 were trading at the strongest level since they were issued last year. Kellogg has signaled that the U.S. would like to see elections held in Ukraine. Yes, absolutely. It can't be a dictatorship anymore. While Trump has indicated that access to critical minerals in return for U.S. support could be part of a settlement, the retired general on Wednesday confirmed plans to attend the Munich gathering. Let's see. Ukraine's top priority as the ultimate security guarantee is NATO membership, a prospect that Kiev has acknowledged that is unlikely in the short term. I hope it's unlikely ever, because that is a fucking disaster, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. The Ukrainian president's top advisor spoke to U.S. National Security Advisor Michael Waltz this week, while Russia President Vladimir Putin spokesperson said the contacts between U.S. and Russian agencies were intensifying. Both Putin and Zelensky signaled that previous refusal to talk to each other has softened as Trump's plan approaches. In an interview late Tuesday with television host Piers Morgan, Zelensky reiterates the readiness to talk to Putin and end the war in the presence of Ukraine's partners. The Ukrainian leader's statement echoed remarks to Bloomberg last month. Guys, one of the things that I think is interesting is, and I think this shows that Trump might actually be serious about a peace deal, is that he's not like jumping right in and like, we got to have peace today. Zelensky, stop fighting. Putin, stop fighting. He's not doing that, right? It looks like he's actually letting his deal makers put together something that both sides may be able to, and ultimately if both sides hate the deal, then it's probably a good deal. And so maybe we can, knock on wood, get something like that.
I think that you could end this war with one neat trick. It really involves a platter and one man's head. But what do I know? So.
No, I think you're right. Joe, there's no way in hell Zelensky stays president. And no matter win, lose, or draw, in the end, there's no way he can stay president. This is, this guy is not an honest dealer.
That's true.
All right.
You got another $5 Rumble rant from Pinochet.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Pinochet's helicopter for $5 says, I understand that Joe, however, isn't a file designation mere existence a violation of one's 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments, right? I see no reason people couldn't do the same and make a list of it. Could you FOIA that information, Don?
Well, you can, but here's the point. That's not those things all apply to a criminal prosecution. Having a file is not a criminal prosecution. And as for the second part of your comment, we're not going to talk about targeting feds on the internet. I know everyone likes to say, oh, but this is the Rumble chat. Dude, the whole world can see that Rumble chat and they can find out who you are. So maybe dial that back a little bit. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Doesn't the FBI teach you people to be subtle anymore? You just go right for it.
It goes without saying that anything that sounds like a call for any kind of direct action from anyone here on the council is obvious tongue-in-cheek humor, and we even avoid that kind of tongue-in-cheek humor.
What's the entrapment equivalent of buy me a drink first?
Right. Oh, say it again, Watcher.
Oh, I said, what's the entrapment equivalent of buy me a drink first?
Exactly.
All right. Final odds and ends story here today. We've got DOJ disbands Foreign Influence Task Force, limits scope of FARA prosecutions. Peter, was this you that threw this one in the notes?
Which one was that again?
Was this the FARA prosecutions?
No, I don't think. Yeah. Yeah, it was me. They disbanded the Foreign Influence Task Force that DOJ did, and then if you actually look at all Fed agencies, even like Department of State, they have a foreign malign influence type of division.
So let me just kind of read a little bit of the story. Fair notice, I was not able to pre-read any of this, so I'm not sure what's in here. DOJ disbands Foreign Influence Task Force, limits scope of FARA prosecutions. Both the task force and FARA were used by the Bureau to investigate, charge, and disrupt foreign and domestic actors accused of working to influence American policy on behalf of other nations. One of the first acts taken by Pam Bondi after being sworn in as it was to disband the FBI task force that countered the influence of adversarial foreign governments on American policy. In a memo issued Wednesday, Bondi wrote the Department of Justice would be shifting resources in its National Security Division, including disbanding FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force to free resources to address more pressing priorities and end risk. Guys, this is one of those kind of things that on the surface of it, that sounds like something we would want to do. We would want to curb foreign influence on American politics, right? The problem is that they create this and they immediately turn it on the American people.
Yep. It's the inward turning and everything that we used during the GWAT.
Right. Yeah. So this is exactly what we were talking about when we warned everybody about the Patriot Act back in 2003, 2004 when they were doing that whole nut roll. It's like, oh, I get it. You want to go after these terrorists, and there's something to be said there. But when you create a power, you're not going to give it up just because you got the terrorists that the power was created for. Then you're going to just turn it back on the people.
You know what would have been an easy FARA prosecution to make? Photo of a U.S. press secretary standing between Sergei Lavrov and Maria Zakharova in a PQ but we decided. Well,
another one would be a affirmed Maoist CIA director who wanted to continue to influence, U.S. government policies into the Trump administration.
You mean all of them?
I mean, I'm talking about Brennan off the top of the rip, but there are 41 that I can think of.
Yes. As I say, way to narrow it down.
Yeah, but let's be honest. Brennan is a very egregious example of that.
You got to be careful saying that. That is a sure way to summon up Ron.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
He disavowed the communist.
Which one is the one that lied to Congress about the everything that was exposed by Snowden? Was it Clapper?
Yeah.
Was it Clapper or was it?
No, I think that was Clapper.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, this is why, way to narrow it down. Right?
Well, and Michael Hayden's another one,
Hey, yeah, they are, and actually. I don't know if I can share that. There's one of them, a former one of those individuals who is having mental decline at the moment. So,
yeah,
like early stages of dementia.
Well, the irony is that Trump when Trump became president in 2016. It was like the ultimate trigger for them all to expose themselves, and they did a wonderful job of it.
Yeah. What's the quote that Sugar made? Remember?
It's the intelligence agencies have six ways
to get to you. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, he knew because they got to him, and B, he used them to get the people he wanted to get to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But just the fact that a sitting senator felt secure enough to say such a thing.
Yeah. So far as what got Paul Manafort, he pleaded guilty under violating FARA by declining to disclose that he was being paid by the Ukrainian government.
Yeah.
He was also accused by Mueller and in a separate report released by the Senate Intelligence Committee of handing over Trump campaign polling data to Kilimnik, who was later identified by the Treasury Department as a Russian intel asset. Abused against Americans, right? And let's be honest, most of the Americans that they've kind of gotten this, they're mostly guilty of ignorance, if they're guilty of anything at all, and a lot of them are completely innocent. Pete, any final thoughts on this? I think
it's a big deal. I think having those foreign malign intelligence divisions with all these agencies is dangerous because again, they're not looking outward; they're looking inward with those divisions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, that's the end of odds and ends. Hey, Joe, I see you're muted. Are you there?
Yes.
Let's talk about tactical-wisdom.com, shall we?
Mm-hmm. Cool. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. What you got going on there this week?
Nothing.
Hey, let me ask you. I know
I'm dying. We'll get back to you next week.
Listen, the amount of content that I put out is directly proportional to the amount of books that are sold, and no one's buying any books, so I don't have the money to type. So
let me ask you this. We don't live in Alaska, Montana gets a lot of snow and it stays pretty cold, but it's, prepping for heavy winter weather. I mean, what does that look like? I mean, clearly Michigan and Montana are two areas where you get some pretty significant weather. So I would imagine you've got some strong thoughts on this.
Yeah, I put out like one article a month on it.
Well, I wasn't going to reference them directly, but I mean, I thought maybe this would give you an opportunity to then point back to them and get people to check out some of your previous articles. But if you don't want
other articles, learn about winter preparedness according to Scott. Have a shovel, carry a shovel.
Well, it can't be according to me because Joe's the one that wrote the articles. So,
actually, I do have one here, and this is more of a how to navigate the Tactical Wisdom website. Joe, is there an easy way to search previous articles? Like if somebody's like, "Hey, I wonder if Joe's written about this before," is there a search
There's
bar
an
somewhere there?
archives link up at the top. Well, there
Okay.
used to be. I think I ran out of space.
Too many good things.
Yeah, there used to be an archives link where you could just look at them. It'll give you a list. I'll have to clean that up. We'll fix it. I'm going to take the contact page off because the leftists have found my contact page and it sucks. So
I was going to say, Joe, if
You're not
I will
enjoying
happily plug your stuff and what a huge benefit it's been for us down here, and from the classes as well as the books, and learning new things, and as well as reaffirming things we were already trying. And your classes are a gold mine of that information.
yeah, you know what? Security class, and we really talked about things. We're going to talk about that in the second half of the show, where those skills directly relate to what you were doing and how it helps. But I hate people like you because every time I feel like throwing in the towel, you come in and say nice stuff like that, and I can't do it. So,
Good.
all right, we'll get back at it. It's been a rough week. I'm pretty sick, and I don't feel very good. So I really don't have anything to talk about on tactical wisdom.
Yeah, there's a lot going around.
Yeah.
Well, since you don't have anything to talk about on tactical wisdom, I'm gonna give just a brief and, in my opinion, hilarious update. There is currently a vote being held on X on whether we should reinstate the staffer formerly known as Big Balls.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
obviously.
my gosh. I'm pulling that up right now. Bring back Doge staffer who made inappropriate statements via a now deleted pseudonym. Yes, absolutely bring him back. 81.4% agree with us. That's so fun.
Because we've got the biggest balls of them all.
Well, I'm looking for a previous Elon post about this very staffer. I'm not seeing it. It might be a reply. Elon tweets a lot, so it's hard to find all his tweets. But yeah, he's if you're not tracking, one of the I guess he was for the Treasury Department, one of the Doge staffers who has a background with Tesla, SpaceX, and XAI, who focuses on AI research. He made some edgy comments, would you say, Watcher? About his dislike of Indians in Silicon Valley, and a couple of years back, and has since deleted that. Who knows why or whatnot? And he was being tongue in cheek, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. But ultimately, this is. His pseudonym or screen name or whatever is Big Balls, and they found his old stuff and they doxed him, and I don't know if he was let go or if he elected to step down, but he is no longer working with Doge, it appears. But it looks like Elon's trying to get him back.
Yeah. Now, Joe, I got to say I'm no doctor, but this does sound like solid logic to me.
The bar is literally right there. It's not a coincidence.
All right. Let's move on. We're going to talk a little bit about USAID, the Useless Spending and Insidious Dollars Agency. Guys, this is one we've kind of talked around all week, but I wanted to kind of save it more for Friday because we'd get a deeper dive into the topic. We'd have a better idea. And let me be honest with you, we haven't been disappointed, I think. Every day, new kind of things have come to light. My favorite was finding out that Politico couldn't pay its payroll because the USAID money disbursements were turned off. So evidently they were getting like $8 million. They were getting all these like enterprise level subscriptions. And they said that was totally normal. So let's jump into this first story. Trump nukes government MSM mainstream media contracts after Politico firestorm will axe 97% of USAID staff. USAID described as premier weapon of U.S. hybrid warfare. So first bit of this, he's talking about the termination of media contracts. President Trump's directed General Services Administration to cancel all media contracts, sparked by a controversy over government funding of media subscriptions, particularly Politico. This decision follows the discovery of tens of millions of dollars in taxpayer money being spent on subscriptions like Politico Pro, with one notable case of an $8 million allocation. Watch her scroll down just a little more. I think there's the White House spokesperson kind of gives the overview. Yeah, I think this is her right here.
I can confirm that the more than 8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening. The DOJ team is working on canceling those payments now. Again, this is a whole of government effort to ensure that we are going line by line when it comes to the federal government's books. And this president and his team are making decisions across the board on, do these receipts serve the interests of the American people? Is this a good use of the American taxpayers' money? If it is not, that funding will no longer be sent abroad, and American taxpayers will see significant savings because of that effort.
Also, spending that much money on Politico would seem to be a violation of the First Amendment, because once Politico became that in hoc to the United States government,
right,
it then lost its objectivity. Right.
Yeah. So, Joe, that's a great example of, when Fox News would do any kind of reporting, say on like something related to News Corp, whatever.
I can't hear him.
Can you guys hear me?
Now I can.
I think that one might be Joe.
Anyway, so like when Fox News, which was owned by News Corp, when they would report on some other portion of News Corp, they would always give the disclaimer, that, hey, the News Corp says, Fox News is also owned by News Corp, and we're, just to show the potential conflict in the reporting, transparency, right? At what point does Politico say, oh, by the way, just to let you know, our entire payroll is funded by USAID grants, right? Or through the absolute overwhelming amount of subscriptions we receive from pro accounts for the U.S. government. So Politico's response is they've denied receiving government funding directly in terms of subsidies or grants, emphasizing we have not received one dime from the government in their 18 years of operation. However, they acknowledge the government subscription services, right? So this is where it's all bullshit, right? Because the U.S. government does not need $8 million worth of services from Politico. And I bet that the U.S. government probably is the vast majority of all their subscriptions that they get completely. USAID staff reduction.
What exactly are they providing?
And that's just these kind of enterprise level pro accounts where they can get multiple sign-ins or whatever. It's all bullshit. Like for instance, I haven't been listening to Tim Pool lately, but I did listen to what he was saying after this Politico thing went. And he was saying the reason why he shut down his news reporting kind of business was because no matter how good they were doing, they couldn't make money off of it, And he's like, how do these left-wing people who have no supporters, no fans, no audience, right? How do they continue to make this money? And when this came out, he's like, the light bulb went off. I now know how they stayed afloat. It was because the U.S. government was subsidizing them indirectly through these pro subscriptions. He said, he said for his service, he had $1,000 a month pro subscription that you could get, right? He said 0 people have subscribed to it. He had 0 takers on that. And he said it was just something to have just in case, a whale wanted to come in and support what he was doing. And So, I mean, if you're not in favor, if you're not toting the government line, then you're not going to get the money. And this is the reason why the government has so much.
Let me just tell you all, you'll get a lot more value in your life if you give me $1,000 a month than you will giving it to Tim Pool.
Yeah, you ain't wrong.
Or Politico.
So, look, this happened relatively quietly, and you only likely noticed if you pay attention to leftists, which I understand nobody wants to do because they're obnoxious wiener faces. However, about a year ago, Vosh, Destiny, I forget the other one's name, the trans one, right? Literally, all of BreadTube was having this open argument because somebody had published that they all got paid something to the tune of $20,000 a month from a PAC. And that they were, well, that may or may not be the case, but it doesn't change my reporting in any way. Like, well, look, you can chicken or the egg this all you want, but if you're getting propped up to the tune of $250,000 a year to be a radical leftist, do they need to pay you for your opinions, or are they just paying a psychopath to say what a psychopath already would have said? Who really cares? In the end, guess what never happened to me? Not once. No one showed up and went, would you like $20,000 a month to continue reporting? Never happened. Literally never.
Right. No, you're absolutely right, Don. And yeah, this is just, I mean, this is the kind of thing that we all wanted. This is what we thought drain the swamp meant, like during the first Trump administration, but it never happened. And so the fact that it's actually happening now, that's the thing that I'm most shocked about. It's not that we're finding out that all these things that we suspected to be the case are the case. That's not shocking. It's because I always knew it. What's shocking is that anybody is actually doing this. And I think that's what has got the left in an uproar is they see that their golden goose is literally getting gut right in front of them. And they don't know how they can stay in power or ever have a chance in being relevant without this apparatus that they've created. So, there's a bit of schadenfreude, I think.
That's because they can't. And that said, yesterday Sean Ryan dropped an interview with some lady talking about exactly this sort of thing. The Democrat Party is in panic. They don't know how they're going to continue. But one, this is the tip of the spear, right? Like if you think they put all their eggs in one basket, boy, do I have bad news for you. There's going to be a ton more. But equally, I think that lady in particular is a super great example of what everybody ought to be vigilant for right now. This is a lady who raised hundreds of millions of dollars for the Democrat Party apparatus, who in the middle of that interview goes, well, but I've always been conservative. No, the fuck you haven't. All right. And stop it right now. These are the grifters who are going, oh man, this ship is sinking and I need to get off. So, I've always been a little bit conservative, and it was just a job. No, you didn't raise the GDP of a small country for the Democrat Party because it was a job. Stop it. And in the world of mistakes that are being made and how this could go very badly in the future is that the Trump White House has already co-opted this lady, already brought her in. Bad things will happen if you keep these leftist, absolutely horrible people. And because I just learned in 2022 that Biden was losing his mind, which is a point that she makes, right? Like, well, all the rest of the world watched him on TV from before the election.
We knew it. Yeah, we knew it during the election that he had lost his mind.
So,
Derna
get ready for a lot of that.
Yeah, Derna for $5 said this isn't GSA 2.0. We have the executive this time. So when are people going away forever for undeclared campaign? Yeah. So what I want to see is when they go after what is it? The Wind Blue. What's
Act
the blue? Act Blue, right? Because that is the ultimate grift machine. It is literally a money laundering operation. And the sad thing is it's publicly available how they're doing it. Peanut Shades Helicopter Tours for $5 says taking even a penny makes political, and everyone who work there a propagandist, and they should be branded, figuratively branded. Joe, not my ideas are Fed posting called for a march to the sea. Nah, you're good, brother. Just relax and remember where you're talking, right? Our jokes can be taken a little too literally from time to time, so just keep that in mind. All right.
What's the old saying? First of all, keep your fucking voice down.
Right. Followed by, how would this look when labeled Exhibit A?
Yeah. So going further, USAID staff reduction. The Trump administration plans to significantly reduce USAID staff by 97% and approximately 10,000 employees to just 294. This draft comes after revelations by Elon Musk's Doge team that USAID were funding woke projects and activities deemed anti-American. We were talking about things that seemed like a good thing at the time. And USAID, I get it. It was created by Kennedy back in the 60s during the era of, the domino theory, and we needed to kind of contain the Soviet Union. And so USAID was used to kind of prop up a lot of countries that we wanted to positively impact in order to get their cooperation against the Soviet Union. But ultimately, it goes from potentially a good use scenario, but it outlives its usefulness, should have been done away with. And now it turns into essentially a money laundering operation. And, Don, like you said, this is not the only money laundering operation in the government. And I think we will eventually find that almost every agency of the United States government has some level of this going on. Others, it's just a matter of scale and type, I think.
There's a funny thing going around on that front, which is a whole bunch of leftists are out there screaming like, "Oh, wait till they get to the DOD. It's going to come for Republicans too." And in pretty traditional fashion, most of the right wing posting on the internet is like, "Good."
Yeah, exactly right. Your terms are acceptable,
right?
Well, and here's the thing. A lot of these think tanks that dominate the upper level kind of brain trust that kind of rotates in and out of the Pentagon are absolutely blob, swamp, leftist. Maybe not leftist, but definitely institutional thinking machines, not what you'd call focused on liberty and things like that. So, and they're definitely probably mostly just corrupt because they're used to prop up the military-industrial complex. So we'll see when we get to DOD how that kind of goes down. All right. Let's see. Let's go ahead and move to the second story. So the next one is USAID's role. Let's see. USAID premier weapon of hybrid warfare in the Southern Hemisphere. And this kind of moves a little bit into what we'll be talking about later with south of the border stuff. So what is their role in hybrid warfare? USAID is described as a key instrument of U.S. hybrid warfare tactics, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere. It's accused of funding political movements under the guise of human rights, i.e., Catholic charities, in order to get as many, kind of criminal aliens into the United States as possible. So their tactics essentially were, they used, they're known to fund media projects that aim to expose corruption, therefore fostering opposition of incumbent governments through street protests. Sounds a lot like color revolutions to me, guys. What do you think?
I mean, that is the term for it.
Well, I mean, so if you don't think that the USAID isn't a weapon that's been used by the United States against many a country in the world, look no further than these examples. Let's see. I'll just continue here. Let me go to my next point here. So so what are the implications of ending USAID? I mean, you could make an argument that this may be something that we would want to do. The Monroe Doctrine states that, hey, we want to kind of be strong in the Western Hemisphere, but there's got to be better ways to do it than these these unaccountable money laundering operations that funnel money into things that are not in the U.S. interest. And I think that's probably the reason why USAID was sucked up into the State Department and then basically given a 90% haircut so that they could maybe potentially keep things that they think might be useful in the future. But I honestly don't know what could be useful at this point. Maybe that I'm showing my ignorance, but
that's sort of the issue, right? Is that Monroe Doctrine call is correct, and we just prima facie decide that the Monroe Doctrine was a good idea. And in the world of just real basic indicators of whether you should examine that presence or not, the single greatest champion for about 20 years of the Monroe Doctrine was Bernie Sanders. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that because Bernie Sanders said it was wrong, but if Bernie Sanders says something I agree with, the first thing that I do is go figure out whether or not I'm wrong. All right.
Right. No, but here's the thing, right? If you think that the Monroe Doctrine is correct, but then you also accept that that Marxism has a place in Central and South America, then you, by the very nature, are saying I accept ideologies that are essentially controlled by off-sea entities into the Western Hemisphere, and those are kind of like
also planning to fail, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Best case scenario, you got Maoist rebels that are not supported by China. Well, they're still Maoist fucking rebels, right? And they need to go away. $10 super chat from Derna. If you're waging hybrid war and you're not at war with that country, isn't that just terrorism? How about the NED, their whole budget? It's funny you should mention the NED. We have so I want to get to this. I want to get to more of the media stuff first, but then we'll talk about the NED. So hold that thought, Derna. So anyway, while the swamp's favorite charity, USAID, definitely gets its much need drain cleared, it turns out tax dollars have been putting up at the very media that loves to bash Trump and MAGA. No surprise, right? I mean, so this is what they do. And surprise, surprise, the U.S. federal government was paying them to do this. Let's take a look at the deep state has been kind of wasting our hard-earned tax dollars, in the recent past. So this next article, let me open it up here. So Politico's basically pleading ignorance, claims tens of millions of government subscriptions, totally normal. This is totally normal. So this just kind of drills down a little bit into this media shit show. So my experience in the military, and the reason why I'm particularly interested in this, my experience in the military has mostly been as a public affairs officer. I've done it for over 14 years. And let me just tell you that if you think that the media is on your side as a military public affairs officer, you got another thing coming. They are literally your adversaries because they will look for opportunities to take the words that you say and put them out of context. For the most part, the best thing you can do is you can use access to your operations as a carrot to get them to give you at least neutral to generally favorable coverage. Right? They may come to you and say, hey, we're looking for this kind of story. Can you give us something like this? And if you give them that, then they will then generally know what side their bread's buttered on and not want to burn bridges down. But ultimately, if you give them something juicy enough, they will fuck you over it in a minute. That's just the way the media has always kind of worked with the military. The exhibit one of that is what happened with the Rolling Stone guy. Now, that being said, there are some things that he reported on that he should have reported on. There are some other things that he probably shouldn't have reported on because he was being given, personal access. Like I actually talked to guys who were having personal conversations with the guy, and he related some of the things that were obviously given either on background or definitely off the record, and that he by named people and made them look bad. So the media is not your friend. By the way, the media has now proven without any doubt that they are being funded by our own government. So Politico responded to the controversy, writing in a Thursday memo that they never received any government funding, subsidies, grants, or handouts. Not a dime in 18 years, but that $27 million, $27 million, I will repeat that again, in government subscriptions to Politico Pro is simply a transaction that did not influence them in any way. I'll be honest with you guys. I can't imagine that they made anything more than 27 million in revenue during this entire time. They sure as fuck weren't making that much money on ads, and they definitely weren't getting subscriptions from anybody else worth that amount. Just on its face, this is probably the huge. People trust the media. Like the sheeple trust the media. They trust Politico. They trust BuzzFeed, they trust MSNBC, they trust these people. And the fact that they are literally now proven to be taking the government's dime to literally, work against the U.S. interest is, I'm pretty fucking pissed off about this. Let's see. Let me go down here. Yeah. Hunter Biden's lucrative off sales were also a transaction, totally not buying influence. Perhaps he should. Yeah. So this is a great example. Everybody who talked about the whole Hunter Biden's art, like the only reason people are spending that much money on his art is because he's Hunter Biden. And it's a way for them to launder money into his pockets. And so that's exact same thing with Politico. Let me find it. So there's the Pat Bondi thing. Staff at Politico did not get paid for the latest pay period. The company just sent several emails to employees. So basically, their money gets cut off at Treasury Department, and all of a sudden they can't pay their payroll. If they're so in debt, entitled, connected to this money that they can't pay their payroll, it's definitely.
Now, they assure us that that's not the real reason. It's just purely a coincidence.
We're talking to our bank. We're going to figure it out. And it's
also, weirdly, coincidentally, Vosh is now suddenly begging for donations and acting like he's about to be broke and lose his apartment. Purely coincidental.
Oddly enough, a lot of the bread tubers, and now, in fairness, this didn't just start with this kind of USAID thing, but since the election, many bread tubers have found their taps turned off because they've shown themselves to be completely ineffective at convincing people to do something. Let's see. They say there's no evidence the two are linked, suggesting prompted internet sleuths to look at Politico sources for funding, and what they found was shocking. According to the government spending tracker, USAspending.gov, Politico, which laundered the Hunter Biden's 51 intel officials' propaganda during the 2020 elections, received up to $27 million, and by some counts, up to $32 million from various U.S. agencies during the Biden years. Yeah, and so you showed the chart there when you had those tweets up. In one instance, roughly 50,000 was spent on 37 Politico Pro subscriptions, which is it's just very odd that what does the government need 37 of these subscriptions for, much less one. Let's see, it's $10,000 a year for that Politico Pro. One of note, Politico was sold to German media giant Axel Springer which also owns Business Insider, for $1 billion in 2021, meaning U.S. taxpayer dollars have been flowing to a German media giant to prop up U.S. propaganda rags. So they're estimating that up to 90% of subscribers to people like Politico are fake taxpayer funded. 90%, and that's going to a German media company, so that German media can then essentially propagandize the United States populace. And Politico is not the only one. USAID funding going to New York Times, 3.1 million. Politico, 32 billion. BBC, 3.2 million, approximate. Meanwhile, this is a Zero Hedge article, by the way, and Zero says, we haven't received a dime from the U.S. government or any government, and they call them assholes, while coming under reoccurring attack from the deep state. So, yeah, I think that's very much like what you were saying, Don. They're getting all the money, and guys like us are getting nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't blame them, right? 50% of the content I have ever produced is this is how the government is screwing you. So I'm not surprised that the government doesn't want to pay me for that.
I can't imagine why, Don.
Right.
Well,
I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't mind some. I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't mind some help with paperwork to, if it wasn't too late, to get my money out of this and do some self-funding, because we could definitely, in the past, have used the help.
Well, it was this part of the whole STEMI checks that people were talking about getting a few years back. I mean, I never got one of those, but evidently that was a thing. So who knows? All right. The National Endowment for Democracy. This is our last piece of this segment. Guys, Joe, I'll be honest with you. I had forgotten all about the National Endowment for Democracy until you mentioned it. I think it was on Monday is when you mentioned that. So I did a little research back into them. I was like, oh yeah, these guys. And then I remember, Joe, just kind of real quickly, tell people a little bit about the National Endowment for Democracy and how it's not some sort of good old boys money laundering operation for the left.
Well, it is a good old boys money laundering operation. And that's the joke. First of all, it claims to be a non-governmental organization. There's nothing non-governmental about the NED. Everyone who works in it's a former governmental functionary, and it's all supported by various groups that you know of, like the CFR and all these others. But more importantly, on the board of directors sits a particular person. That person is Vicky, Your Country is About to Have a Revolution, Newland. And when you look at some of these revolutions that have happened throughout the world, a lot of the money comes from the National Endowment for Democracy. And what they do is they fund groups that are trying to overthrow or unseat governments that are decided upon by the board of the NED as not being very democratic. For example, whoever was before Poroshenko, who was the guy who was ousted?
Yanukovych?
Yeah, Yanukovych. He was elected by his people, but the NED decided it wasn't democratic enough, so they decided to overthrow that government with the Maidan Revolution. They tried the same thing in Georgia before that. They led most of the color revolutions and the Arab Spring, with behind-the-scenes money funneled into student groups and various protest and organizing groups to get out and talk about democracy or alternatives to whomever the current ruler was. We've seen them rear their heads in Libya, Egypt, Georgia, Ukraine, Hungary. Most recently, they're a big target, Viktor Orban. And basically, wherever the NED shows up, you see the hand of the CIA. I'm not going to say it's a front for the CIA, even though it is entirely a front for the CIA, but they are out there.
Yeah, no, that's well said. Not a front for the CIA while being a front for the CIA. Let me read a little bit of this here. After that, let's see. So Elon posts, those who know, please reply to this post listing all the evil things the NED has done. It's a long list. After merciless arm twisting, NED, National Endowment for Democracy, bashes going back shortly to after it was 1983, formed in 1983. In a November 29, 1985 article in the Oakland Tribune, NED is hailed as one of the newest, most prestigious boondoggles on the Potomac. But there were plenty of scoffers early on. NED has been called many things: an international political action campaign, committee, taxpayer-funded a foreign elections program, a slush fund for political hacks who like to travel to warm climates and cold weather. The following year, after fresh NED scandals, Senator Ernest Hollings howled, "This thing is not the National Endowment for Democracy, but the National Endowment for Embarrassment." From its very inception, the NED has been riddled with scandal and impropriety. But it was just a job for the boys program that enabled politicians to launder money to plenty of their aides and donors. So it survived one pratfall after another. Let's see. In 2001, the NED quadrupled its aid to Venezuelan opponents of elected Hugo Chavez. Look what that got us. And NED heavily funded some of the organizations involved in the bloody military coup that temporarily removed Chavez from power in April 2002. After Chavez retook control, NED and State Department responded by pouring even more money into groups. So that is a perfect example, Joe, of the kind of cover for action that it's provided, and potentially just a way to launder money into the CIA for their operations. Let's see. It also helped with the free and fair elections in 2004 in Ukraine. In those 2 years prior to the election, the United States spent over $65 million to aid political organizations in Ukraine, paying to bring opposition leader Viktor Yushchenko to meet U.S. leaders and to help underwrite exit polls indicating he won a disputed runoff election. So, I mean, these guys have been at it for a long time. NED is based on the notion that meddling in foreign elections is automatically pro-democracy because the U.S. government is the incarnation of democracy. Now, gentlemen, it's hard to say that without cracking a smile. So the NED is just, I haven't seen like an autopsy on the NED yet, like we've seen with USAID, but I can't imagine it isn't going to be even more crazy
Well, I
than
think
the USAID.
Musk actually ended up deleting that tweet, so he may have gotten some sort of a warning about don't touch the golden egg. So I don't know. I went back and looked, and I thought that tweet was taken down.
No, I can view it. I think what he did. Let's see. The original tweet that he did, which is so he's. I'm trying to look because I can see the tweet when I click on it here on X. Let me hold on a second. Let me share my screen. Unless I'm doing something wrong here. So this is the tweet here. It says, "For those who know, please reply to this post listing all the evil things." Yeah. So when you click on the link there, the post that he shared is unavailable. So that's probably the one that you're talking about. So this, and then of course, by the way,
chronologically or alphabetically.
Yeah.
So.
Right, exactly. By the way, Data Republican on X has been a good follow. A lot of really good stuff that they've been doing with all this USAID, kind of connecting the dots and at least visualizing where some of this money is coming from. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into our south of the border segment here. What do you guys want to talk about first? How about Panama and what ended up and what? Because it was up in the air the other day when we talked about this. We had gotten word that Panama potentially had accepted a deal, but then China was like, no deal was made, and that they wouldn't be able to pull out of the Belt and Road Initiative. Let's see. About 10 years ago, Luis Sola's family maritime business was given a concession to build a marina and cruise port in Amador, a causeway located at the Pacific entrance of the Panama Canal. This would have been the very first cruise port on the Pacific, Sola, who now serves as the U.S. Federal Maritime Commission chairman, said. Everything changed in 2017 when Panama signed on with the Chinese regime's Belt and Road Initiative. The initiative required Panamanian government to recognize Taiwan as part of China, much to the surprise and concern of the United States, which has positioned itself as an ally of Taiwan. Panama rescinded the concession on the land where Sola family had planned to spend $30 million on a cruise port. Instead, Panama nationalized the project, gave a concession to a Chinese company, and paid it $300 million to build a cruise port.
By the way, who knows anything significant about Amador? What did it used to be called? Fort Amador, United States Army Base.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because it was part of the canal zone, right?
Yes. Yep.
So they gave the money, they gave that concession to a Chinese company and paid it $300 million to build the cruise port. The Panamanian government gave China $300 million. Anyway, additionally, the land would have been used to build a marina, was designated an embassy of the People's Republic of China. See, Joe, this is that whole sovereign territory claim that China makes for all of its, these bonded warehouses and things that they set up where they can essentially prepo Chinese military equipment. Panama then rescinded the concession on the land. Let's see, let me go further. Additionally, the land would have been used to build a marina embassy. Eventually, Solis got the land back, and the U.S. domestic pressure ended Chinese regime's plan of building an embassy at Amador. The most recent blow to China, Panama's president announced on February 2nd that it will not renew its Belt and Road Agreement with the Chinese Communist Party, a significant win for Trump's pressure campaign. Chinese influences. This is the port of Cristobal. Scroll down just a little further and you can see the map there of it. Sola's personal story told during the 28th Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation hearing underscores what has become a hot button topic, Chinese influence in the Panama Canal. And this is, let's see, Chinese infrastructure and ports on both the Atlantic and Pacific ends of the Panama Canal have some experts concerned that Beijing has de facto control over the waterway, a potential violation of the U.S.-Panama Neutrality Treaty, which places U.S. national security at risk. Now, Joe, the Panamanian government has said, hey, we're the ones that control the actual operation of the canal. So, no, China doesn't have control of it. But let's be honest, Joe, they de facto do have control because they have the influence and they basically own both ends of it with these key facilities.
What we need to do is what we did just prior to the invasion in '89. It's what we call the sand flea exercises. A sand flea irritates the crap out of you, right? And what we did was we would drive LAVs from one side of the canal to the other to show our freedom of movement and that we actually owned it and no one else did. I think we should return to that. I think that's a great idea.
Well, I mean, when Panama kicked off, we actually had troops already in Panama when it kicked off. I mean, there were permanently stationed troops in addition to the ones.
Yes, I stepped off from Rodman Naval Air. So yes.
Yeah. Yes,
most of the troops were already in country. We did have the Rangers and such in Delta jump in from stateside, but yes.
All right. So Trump says China has operated the Panama Canal and we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama and we're taking it back. Chinese soldiers don't have to be on the ground for CCP to disrupt canal and jeopardize U.S. national security should the United States be drawn into a conflict with the Chinese regime over Taiwan. According to senior policy analyst for Latin America at the Heritage Foundation, the fact that two of Panama's 5 principal ports are controlled by Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison Holdings at Balboa on the Pacific side and Cristobal on the Atlantic side is significant concern for some analysts. Equally worrisome in a 2018, a Chinese consortium headed by China's state-owned China Harbor Engineering Company, China Communications Construction Company, was awarded a $1.4 billion contract for the canal's 4th bridge. You know, Joe, it's one of those kind of things. You don't need to have the guys on the locks, in your pocket. All you need is, 15 or 30 commandos with pre-pod gear at both ends to be able to then, wreck the works, if you will, on those locks and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, it's really easy to control. It's not very long, and it doesn't take much to handle it. Ever since the Operation Just Cause, Panama has not had a standing military. They have border control, they have the national police, and they have a small navy, and that's it. They don't have an actual army. So they don't really have much infrastructure there to defend. But what's cool for us is that with the way that migrants flow from South America to North, having control over the canal, a body of water that divides the two, would be a positive physical barrier that's not very wide that you could actually stop people at.
Yeah.
In fact, the bridge that we feature in our opening segment of our show with all the people on it is the bridge of the Avenue of the Americas. It's the Pan American Highway, that runs from South America to North America.
All right. Sorry, Peter Shea. I skipped your super chats. Let me get back to you. Peter Shea's helicopter tours for $5 says, are you tracking how the USAID, CIA, and the OCCRP were the ones who created the basis for the first Trump impeachment and framed Trump? Schellenberger broke the story last night. U.S. cover. Yeah. So this is something that we're probably going to cover in a future episode because I saw the story today. And I haven't kind of dug into it, so I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it to be able to talk. So
yeah, I want to back up and JSUP says any Chinese corporation with an Anglo name should be investigated as CCP hostile and shut down. He's talking about Whampoa or Hutchison. It used to be called Hutchison Whampoa, now it's called Hutchison Worldwide or whatever. They claim that that's a private company out of Hong Kong. It is not. It is state-owned.
State-owned.
And it runs ports all along the west coast of the Pacific and also throughout the Caribbean now. So they are expanding Chinese influence all over the world through Hutchison.
Peter Shea's helicopter tours for $5 says, Scott, when performing your duties as a PAO, have you ever mentioned to a reporter that a subject or an incident or investigation may have found out a child was not his? I'm talking about the Cybertruck guy. Yeah, no. I believe it or not, most of the reporters that I dealt with were relatively normal folks. I mean, I did deal with some big name reporters, and of course, the irony there with the big name reporters is they were very kind of like pro, and they would just come in, get what they need, and then they were out, right? And I don't know. They're just normal people. But yeah, you couldn't trust them because they had that whole kind of New York Times kind of mentality. They were more elitist than they were leftist, though, from my from what I heard and what I saw. Peanut Shades helicopter tours again for $5 says Gamergate, Anna Sarkeesian, Sweet Baby Inc., Feminist Frequency, Twitch streamers were all unmasked yesterday as being recipients of USAID money. That's really funny. I didn't hear that. but all those names bring me back to Gamergate and Comicsgate stuff. So that's crazy. Though I did see that I know this is of interest probably to none of you guys that one of the creators of the X-Men 97 was shouting out Ethan Van Sciver the other day. That is something that never would have happened just 5 years ago. All right. Let's move on from the Panama. Anything else on Panama, guys? I thought it was a pretty, obvious reversal of the foot dragging that was going on earlier this week. So I expected exactly this to happen. Did you guys have any different takes on it or a different read?
No, I suspect Rubio said, "Hey, you remember December 20th, 1989? We're way better at it now than we were then." And they were like, "Okay, we cool."
No, I wouldn't take the job. I don't have that much energy. All right. Don, any thoughts? Pete?
I mean, not really. Joe's right. This is pretty expected.
Yeah. This was a great example of how the sledgehammer basically set the stage, and that they probably scared the shit out of him is what they did, and that's exactly what they would have done with that '89 reference. All right, so let's talk the border, gentlemen, and this is a good opportunity to get Juan to jump in here. Before we jump into this story, which talks about kinetic warfare between U.S. troops and the Mexican cartels, let's just paint the picture. What's the border look like, Juan, now that we've gotten the Trump administration in?
It's really weird. It's like I live in a whole other country now compared to what it was previously. Night and day.
Yeah. Well, and you said before the show started, it's like before they put up any more wall, before they had any troops on the border, before the massive arrests started happening, and literally within days of it's my understanding it was within like hours, essentially, you started seeing different behavior on the border.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It went from complete and total insanity from the foot traffic that we see just coming across ranches, the high-speed vehicle chases, the massive numbers of people coming across at the ports of entry, to very quickly drop to a trickle to now it's almost non-existent on the properties that we help people out with trespassing and things like that. It's dropped completely to zero for us. We don't know firsthand about other places that we're not on, but our understanding is that it is also almost non-existent. They still have some, but very, very little.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely there have been some interesting activities with the cartel and whatnot. We did see after the 8-hour trade war that we had with Mexico the other day, Scheinbaum has put some of their Mexican National Guard at different locations in and along the border, vowing to keep the cartel off the border. And I would imagine, Joe, we've got kind of evidence that probably some sort of a deal potentially for military action was probably made based on some of the new activity we've seen along the border. We've got in this story here, we've kind of have that. And Watcher, I've got links right below with the rivet joint tracking if you want to bring those up that kind of reference this. Let me. So anyway, let me just kind of go to the Tom Holland. Tom Homan told ABC News in an exclusive interview that he anticipates a kinetic engagement between the U.S. military and the drug cartels. Let's play that clip real quick, if you would. That's the first tweet that's in the story there. Yeah, that's the one.
Let me ask you about the cartels. They made a clear warning to you and to the United States that, we're going to escalate our violence. So now we're seeing not only Mexican troops after this deal that Trump made with Mexico's president, and also U.S. troops headed to the border. How are you going to utilize the military? We know what the military can and can't do domestically, but in a scenario like this, how do you plan on using the military? Could they get involved in the violence if the cartels strike?
Yes. And we expect them to. But the Mexican military, President Trump's able to get Mexico, put military on their northern border. That will certainly help. I think the cartels would be foolish to take on the military, but we know they've taken on the Mexican military before. But now we have the United States military on the border. We got the men and women of the Border Patrol. Do I expect violence to escalate? Absolutely, because the cartels are making record amounts of money. They're making record amount of money in alien smuggling and trafficking of women and children and drugs. However, as we secure the border, we've gone long ways to secure the border. Crossings are down like 76%. We're taking money out of their pocket. They're not going away quietly, and that's why President Trump designated them terrorist organizations. I would send a warning to them. You heard a Border Patrol agent, you heard a soldier. The wrath of President Trump's going to come down.
Does that mean the military, our troops, U.S. military at the border with weapons, using weapons if need be?
They need to protect themselves. But the cartels, again, give the cartels a warning. If you harm a Border Patrol agent or a soldier, the whole world's going to come down to you. President Trump is a strong president. He is strong enough, and he has the ability to wipe them off the face of the earth. Now, that's the reason they were called terrorist organizations, designated terrorist organizations, because they've killed more Americans with their fentanyl, their drugs, than any terrorist organization in the world. They are now designated terrorists. Do not harm our troops, or President Trump will bring hell rain down, and he has the ability to wipe them off the face of the earth. They can claim they're a pretty tough organization, the cartels, and they are, but they're not stronger than the power of President Trump.
I want to correct her. At the outset, she said the U.S. military cannot be used domestically. That is categorically false. They cannot be used for domestic law enforcement, but they absolutely can be used domestically, particularly against folks who are not subject to U.S. jurisdiction. Right?
Unless they suspend posse comitatus, right?
Right. Enforcing borders is not a violation of posse comitatus.
Right.
And we've ruled that before when we used to have Joint Task Force 6 down there, and it was 100% the way we operated. So they like to say that because they're trying to make it look like we're trying to start something really big down here. But one, you recently shared with me a photo, and we're not going to put it out there because we don't know that guy. But it sure looked to me like a Venezuelan soldier moving along there. Now, how often have you encountered guys like that dude you sent me in that photo?
We come across dudes wearing camo on a very regular basis. If the groups that we catch and the groups we stop and detain for law enforcement are typically between 5 to 10 in number. Usually everybody, especially now, is wearing some sort of camo. Then you can very quickly spot the ones that, have straps policed up, pants bloused, a lot more put together than just some of the other dudes that snag some camo stuff right before they headed over. And yeah, there's definitely some very scary, serious looking people compared to what we normally come across, which is, just some really cheap knockoff Realtree stuff. And that's it. Then we've got other people that we've had several that are just covered in tattoos, and their demeanor is very, very different than a lot of other ones. That's the ones covered in tattoos have been some of the most aggressive and resisting our encouragement to stop and take a break and take their packs and shoes off and relax for a minute while we arrange an air-conditioned car ride.
Um, have you seen any kind of like higher than normal border patrol presence or military or anything like that?
Now, yes, border patrols all over the place. They're actively, shockingly doing their job, which has been a huge source of contention for those of us down here. You know, where I live, there's not much of anything to do other than as far as a career that's going to pay as well as border patrol. So a lot of my friends are in border patrol, and we've had multiple very heated discussions about it, and it's difficult. And but no, they're doing significantly more now than they have been.
Are they back to closing your gates when they pass through? Or are they still leaving them unlocked on you?
We've got, well, the way we fixed that is we just changed all the combination locks whenever they would rarely come out, and so they weren't able to come out. But now we've shared combinations again. They're able to come onto the ranch, and we're happy to help and cooperate in whatever way. But as of right now, we still prefer working with local law enforcement, DPS, state troopers, local sheriff's department, just because we've built a relationship with them. And, you know, whenever we call, we know they're going to show up, especially if, you know, we give them a heads up, a 15, 20-minute heads up of, hey, we're about to have a group of this size. Here's our GPS coordinates. And at this point, they know their way in, they know where we are, and it's much easier. Border Patrol, we've kind of got to start that all over again because it's been years since they've done anything productive.
Well, just so you know, I'm going to be rocking your patch at the Scout and Recce courses next week and my Fieldcraft class. It's going to be a good time.
Nice, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Juan, I'm glad you could join us today. I mean, it's always good to have a little bit more of a on the ground insight as to what's going on. I mean, you know, Don, you're not far from this dude. I mean, what are you seeing? I mean,
I don't know. I think he's pretty far from that dude.
Yeah, right. It's only about
same
1,000
state,
miles
right?
between me and him.
Hey, Texas is a small state. Come on.
Indeed. Like we're basically neighbors.
Basically neighbors. That's what, yeah. In the Midland sense of the word, right?
Right. On the other hand, around here, everybody I know suddenly has trouble with their workforce. So, I mean, Trump wasn't kidding. You know, there are a handful of farmers who are farmers and ranchers who are taken to the media and going, oh, but you know, now I have to, I don't have anybody to show up and pick fruit and all that. And that's probably all true. At the same time, this mostly goes to demonstrate that, like, hey, some of those workforce problems, yeah, that wasn't a joke. The flip side of that, though, a lot of things got real quiet that didn't used to be. So, and for those that don't know, I'm up by Amarillo, and so the far-reaching of this is, I mean, I'm sure I'm not that far. And I say that because I know guys up in Maine who are getting basically the same thing. Like, you know, hey, look, any number of places are opening up that didn't used to be. I think the most over the top that I have seen about this that demonstrates the point is that Houston now has whole neighborhoods that look like a ghost town. And that is... I mean, you're talking about whole subdivisions where like now 6 people live there instead of 2,000 or 3,000. Yeah. So the numbers are not small. That is for sure.
What's interesting is when people say, oh, now all these people are afraid to go to work. I throw back to them the same things that they say to us when we complain about surveillance of our phone and email. If you've got nothing to hide, why are you worried? So to your neighbor who said, well, I don't have anyone to pick my crops. Well, if you hadn't been hiring illegals, you wouldn't have this problem. It's pretty simple.
Unironically the case, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's.
Like I said, one other thing I want to mention that we're watching very closely down here and very concerned about, and I don't know that most people truly understand how real a risk at this is, but with Homan talking about, you know, escalating violence with cartels being a possibility, for us, we're considering that pretty much to be a, a for sure given thing. When and how that's going to escalate, we don't know. We hope it doesn't. There's a lot of trepidation here about Trump declaring cartels terrorist organizations. It needed to happen, but also the potential for significant violence spilling over onto this side is pretty scary. The gentleman's handshake agreement of we'll keep our violence over here as long as you don't jack with us here in Mexico, that's going to go away. And for those that don't know, that's very much the case. It's a handshake agreement between U.S. government cartels, and when that escalates, the stuff that you see in Mexico will very likely start occurring here. So be very aware and be watching for that, and not just on the border. It could be anywhere.
Moving back, yeah. So on that note, with the whole understanding that there's a potential for escalation, but now that you've got them designated as terrorists, there have been shots fired from across the border at like U.S. drones and things like that. So this could easily escalate. So following the world's shortest trade war and Mexico's capitulation, they put those troops along the border, and clearly some agreements were made because by Monday evening, a U.S. Air Force RC-135 rivet joint recon, like an airliner, basically. It's the 707 recon bird, is conducting SIGINT operations over a southern half of Baja California, a region home to heavily armed Tijuana cartel and Sinaloa cartel members. And then on Wednesday, first we had a spy plane. Now we've got the U.S. Navy's nuclear-powered aircraft carrier spotted off the coast of, and I think that's the Nimitz, spotted off the coast of Mexico. Interesting to see that kind of activity so close to making that deal. And then we've got a video here of the SecDef talking with Fox and Friends about the irony of him doing an interview with Fox and Friends. So if we can pull that one up here and we can just listen to that. It's not too long. It's only like a minute.
I'm not seeing the link.
It's in the story. The Border Czar kinetic warfare story. It's the same one with the rivet joint stuff. Yeah, there you go. That's the story. Yeah. That's Tom Homan. Yeah, there you go.
Cartels have been declared terrorist organizations. And if you find that, and we know if there's Al Qaeda, we're going to hit them. I don't care if you're in Somalia, Sudan, or in Syria. If we find that they continue to fire at our border control and they continue to put fentanyl into our country, as the Secretary of Defense, are you permitted now to go after them in Mexico or wherever they are?
Brian, I don't want to get ahead of the president, and I won't. That's ultimately going to be his decision. But let me be clear, all options will be on the table. If we're dealing with what are designated to be foreign terrorist organizations who are specifically targeting Americans on our border, and we're finally securing our border. We've been securing other people's border for a very long time. The military is shifting toward an understanding of homeland defense on our sovereign territorial border. That is something we will do and do robustly. So we're already.
So, I mean, all options are on the table. I mean, that's the kind of code that they put in the media when they literally are looking at things like kinetic operations. Don, of all the artillery weapons, which would you use against the cartel?
Expect a lot of HIMARS. Honestly,
right? Honestly, that's probably right.
Because
BPICM.
Yeah. Well, so no.
A unitary is obviously what they use, but yeah.
Yeah. So they're not. Well, one, we don't fire DPICM is the short answer because its failure rate is greater or less than, depending on how you're looking at it. Its success rate of deploying munitions is less than 90%. And so, the realistic answer here is very likely to be lots and lots of GPS guided munitions, because we are still addicted to the Bill Clinton mentality that, we're going to go and drop GPS guided munitions over the horizon capabilities, blah, blah, blah. And, Delta and SEAL Team 6 are going to do the majority of the engagements. Until you have pretty literally open warfare, nobody is pulling out cannons. It's just not, look, can you imagine how this is going to go? And I say this based almost exclusively on how Gaza and Israel is going, right? They're like, oh, hey, we took down an entire city block. Oh my God, look at how many civilians we killed, blah, blah, blah. And Arty is a giant sledgehammer, and there's this wish that we can turn it into a precision sledgehammer, and we call that GPS guided munitions. It's going to be a disaster in so far as that's true. There's a pretty becoming famous drop of a HIMARS rocket in Marja. That but it hit the wrong building, killed the wrong people, blah, blah, blah. And what the reality of that is, as far as I can tell, one, I was there for the investigation of it, and the answer was HIMARS hit the right building. But I've heard some guys from 6 Marines who were the ones there who called the rocket say, well, it didn't hit the right building. So who will ever know precisely? But what that's going to mean is that everybody is real touchy about using real munitions.
Well, yeah, even like Excalibur and PGK have a CEP of like 3 to 10 meters, which, while that sounds small, it's still, these are big circles. And in an urban environment, that can mean a lot.
So this is part of the problem of why nobody is going to use cannons or rockets or anything like that, right? So 3 to 10 meters sounds small. The kill radius of 155 millimeter artillery
35
round,
meter
50.
That's
right?
50. That's right. Yeah.
So 105s are 35, right? So you're basically talking about demolishing a football field for every round that comes out of the tube, and you get another 50 meters of casualty radius outside of that, which means you're throwing shrapnel 100 meters from wherever the point of impact is. That shrapnel has a 90% chance to cause a casualty that will take you out of the fight. That's what casualty radius means. And so, there's no way to drop Arty in a city and not just cause mayhem, because that's what Arty is there for.
Right. It literally is the tool of mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, CEP, I just threw it out there. I forgot that many of you don't speak military ease. That is circular error probability. Don, do you want to explain that just basically?
So the easiest way to explain this is minute of angle with your rifle. No matter how accurate you are, there is a circle that your round will land in, right? And minute of angle is the one that you guys are all most likely to be familiar with. It doesn't matter how much you will be within X distance of where you intended to fire. So when Scott said you have a probability, an error probability of 10 meters, that means if you put a dot on the ground and drew a circle with a 10 meter radius around it, you would 100% land within that circle.
Yeah. And like I said, 3 meters is pretty damn small. That's what you get with Excalibur. But ultimately, it's not perfect. So,
right.
Yeah, I think honestly, if I see the kinetic usage of being more like that scene from Clear and Present Danger, where they're going after, rural kind of targets more so than urban targets. But all that's going to do, and, feel free, any of you guys, to jump in on this. All that's going to do is they're going to push the bad guys into the urban areas. and they'll just hide inside, the densely populated areas.
That's what we learned with Pablo, right? He was out in the middle of nowhere, but all of his stash house, well, not all, but lots of his stash houses were in cities or, on somebody else's farm, right? They have a pretty consistent track record with these sorts of things. So, but regardless, that methodology itself, right? Like, oh, we know there's guys, hiding here. The headline tomorrow is going to read, corn farmer killed by artillery round.
And as much as we like to think we could fight this war on the border, as I pointed out last night on Sons of Liberty, this will be fought in the shopping malls, in the subdivisions, and in the Walmarts of America. You can strike the cartel leadership all you want down in Mexico, but their retaliation will not be on the border. It will be deep in the heartland. I could drive over here a couple hours south and go to Bozeman, where the majority of the town is Venezuelan and illegal. That's where the retaliation will come from, not way down in Mexico.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah, I mean,
if you're not already, monitor CB radio. It is huge amongst the illegal immigrant population.
If you want to look for a model for what a potential way, it's how we did the whole JSOC campaign against Al Qaeda in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, that era. And a lot of that was done by Afghans. And so what does that mean? That means that a lot of what we would do would operationalize the Mexican military, which I'll be honest with you, I would rate the Mexican military probably higher than the Afghan military. So,
well, you say that, but do you know how we got the Zetas?
Well, I know, that's what I'm saying, right? It's a calculated risk, right? I mean, now we have the Talibans, which are using basically, just re-recruited all of our guys that we trained.
Yeah, and look, we're probably going to do it again. You're not wrong, but the results of these sorts of campaigns has not been amazing. When I say, do you know how we got the Zetas? For anybody who doesn't, in super short, we decided that the answer to the Mexican cartel situation back in the early 2000s was that the Mexicans should take care of this. And so what we were going to do is we were going to send Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 down there, and we were going to teach these guys how to do direct action missions against the cartels. And we did precisely that. And they went down there and they went, so this is all great information. Thanks. That's very wonderful. And the day Delta stepped out of Mexico, Delta and SEAL Team 6 stepped out of Mexico, they went, this would pay better if we were a cartel. And they became a cartel.
Yep.
So while we all kind of, I think, generally agree that, yes, there is a role potentially for military action against the cartels, this is fraught with peril. Hey, speaking of action against the cartel, I see Canon Hotep in the chat. Salute to you, brother. Appreciate you for joining us. If you guys are not subscribed to Canon Hotep, go do that.
I want to give you a real quick story to illustrate how insidious cartels have become in the United States. With all the human trafficking down here, especially on the highways, they bought a used car dealership in the Houston area for the sole purpose of being able to print legitimate paper license plate tags so that they could put on vehicles so that they can drive by license plate readers and not get flagged. They also happen to turn a profit on selling used cars, but the whole reason they did that was specifically for state issued paper tags.
They're bad guys. I mean,
Yeah, that's what it is.
I mean, yeah. All right, let's. I got one last thing. This is relating to the Mexico thing, and then we'll call it a day. gentleman. And this was a little cultural post. The scholar and the gentleman known as Cat Williams, showing us how he feels about the people who aren't happy about what's going on with Mexico. I guess I can share it. Let me share it.
I'm visiting Mexico and I'm defending America. Because are you Mexican? Do you know where Mexico is? No, this ain't Mexico. It used to be Mexico, motherfucker, and now it's Phoenix, goddammit. USA, 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 USA. Yeah, fuck you back, nigga. I bet you don't leave here and go to Mexico, motherfucker. But if you go to your next speech, I'll be your cabrón. No, nigga, do you know where you at, nigga? USA, USA, USA. I don't give a fuck. No,
I won't lie, it's kind of nice seeing Cat Williams out there. And Watcher, you said it before the show. Things that you didn't expect to see at any point in this timeline.
I think he dipped out.
He did. Don, what about you? What's your take on old Cat Williams?
I mean, look, maybe I'm just a little bit cynical. But,
no, well, why would you be cynical?
Right. This seems a lot like, the winds are shifting, so now I gotta say things that might let me continue to make money. I mean, okay, I will take him not being just a raging piece of garbage verbally, but I have no trust in this man at all.
Yeah, I know anybody famous, you have to second guess them. That being said, I know there are probably some number of famous people out there that felt like they had to kind of keep. Well, in fairness, isn't Cat Williams the one who was speaking out about Diddy and all this and all the all that kind of stuff? And like the shit that was going on in like rap music and black comedy and whatnot. So I mean, he does have a little bit of a history of going against the grain. So I guess there's that.
So you got one $10 Rumble rant.
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah. Let me get the $10 one first. Random PNW guy 84 for $10 says bribery may be the cartel's most potent weapon. What are your thoughts on a lieutenant colonel or even a staff sergeant being bribed to look the other way?
They already do. They already own immigration agents and border patrol guys. Why wouldn't
100%. Didn't you see the documentary called Sicario where they had a police department guy to kill a border patrol?
Right. Or read the future documentary Blue Dawn.
Blue Dawn.
Where the Chinese compromised a customs agent. But anyway.
Yeah. And then we've got Lance Corporal Veteran for $2 over on YouTube. Should U.S. militia stay away from U.S. v. cartel war?
First of all, we don't use the M word here. Second of all, partisan activity should remain partisan activity. What is partisan activity? It's not what you think. Everyone thinks partisan means parties. Partisan is a local defense group established to defend the population of an area. Let that be your guide, right? You're not going out and getting involved, but if they come to you, they should certainly be dealt with.
Yeah. There was been some talk about potential letters of marque that would give, but the problem is you would have to.
13 stands ready to accept.
Yeah, right.
And the challenge is there, and we talked about this previously, Joe, was the fact that you would still have to contest not only the ground by the cartel, but then potentially also the Mexican government. So or do you just kind of call it a free fire zone and then go as you need? You know, guys, let's go around the horn. Joe, going into the weekend, what are you looking at?
The Luigi Mangione chanting is getting louder and louder.
Yeah.
I think we need to be watching for absolutely unhinged leftists taking violent action. I know I say it a lot, but look around, look at some of the social media being shared. I'm not saying create an account, but go take a peek at Blue Sky and let me know what it looks like.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Joe. I mean, the leftists are still the committed leftists are still there. It's just a matter of, what are they doing? What's their plan? They haven't disappeared. They are just hunkering down and waiting.
For the record, on that note, Matt and I pointed this out last night on Sons of Liberty. Out of nowhere in Madison, Wisconsin last night, for all of you who keep telling me they don't protest or riot in the cold, Antifa reared its ugly head complete in black bloc and conducted some riotous actions. So, yes, the volume switch is being turned up.
Yeah.
CWSB, that's based on your search history, bro. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Pete, you there?
F.
Nothing heard. Don?
Joe is absolutely right. The lesson that we should all take here is that cornered dogs do crazy things, right? And for everybody who was, back in 2016 and 2020, like, oh, but they're really panicking now. The street actors were panicking at that time. The people who pull levers of power are losing their freaking mind right now. So all of the, hey, don't do that kind of games that very clearly got played in the past. One, I'm not sure they have any capability to reach out and do that at this point. And two, even if they do, there is a very high likelihood, go balls to the wall is the order of the day. So good luck out there.
Yeah. Juan Gringo.
Obviously, keep your heads on a swivel, be paying attention, and I just want to suggest to others, like you've kind of been seeing on X going around, you can just go do things. You don't have to have permission, legally, of course, but find ways. You'd be surprised at what you can do, and go find ways to do those things. Help out your neighbors, your community, and just go do that. And I'm putting some of that out on my X posts on how to do some of that yourself, again, legally. So that's it.
I'll tell you, there's a class that helps you with that.
Yes, very much so. I know a guy that teaches them for sure.
Right. So on that note, not because we want you to go out and be police or anything, but because sometimes you might have to be your own. Look at the LA wildfires. Know your state's citizens arrest laws. Those people used it effectively and stopped the fire and caught an illegal immigrant planning a fire. So know your laws, and you don't need government permission to protect your family and your home. Make it happen. Stop being afraid of them. I mean, they literally have threatened Juan Gringo repeatedly, and he still does it, and he's still here. So,
because we stay legal, we follow the law. There's nothing they can do.
Follow the law.
Make threats.
Yeah. All right. That's about all we have for today, gentlemen. Thank you guys for being here. Chat, you're awesome. Thanks for keeping it wild. Juan Gringo, thank you for joining us, brother. If you ever see anything or hear anything, or you ever see, want to come on and share something, you just let us know, and we'll make sure we'll make it happen. So appreciate your time today. Thank you for contributing. Thanks to Joe, Pete, Don. You guys are awesome as always. And Watcher, I guess Watcher had to go, so Thank you, watcher. And thank you all for being here. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the link with your friends. Make the liking and the commenting generates algorithmic activity both on Rumble and on YouTube. So once we end the show, do a refresh on whatever you're watching, whether it's Rumble, and just throw a comment in if there was something that you liked or didn't like about today's show. Just throw it in there. If you have a question, if you have something that we're not talking about that you think we should be talking about, throw that in there as well. We read all the comments, so we appreciate all of you who do that. Maybe we can get a little bit of an algorithmic tick today. So thank you all very much. And as always, stay safe.